Today we're in the Cuyahoga Valley, about 8 miles north of Akron, at Lock 26 of the old Ohio and Erie Canal. It's called Pancake Lock because in 1828, according to the National Park Service, a culvert failed and silted the lock, which stranded the canal boats. Once those canal boats were stranded and the supplies started to run low, people were forced to eat cornmeal pancakes just to survive. The other thought is that this is called Pancake Lock because the surrounding area is flat as a pancake. I'll let you decide which one you think is true. It's rumored that this lock is haunted by the ghost of George W. Pomeroy, who died at his own hands here at this lock in the summer of 1877. Tugging at your clothes or even ghostly conversations have been reported happening here. And it's said that George's spirit cannot rest until he is reunited with his wife. The events leading up to his death show a man struggling with addiction and heartache, but there's more to George than just his last few days. This is a sad and ghostly tale. So if you're curious, let's take a walk through history. Not much is known about George's youth. He was born in Massachusetts in 1818. And after migrating to Ohio, he married Mary Ann Clark in Columbiana County and had 2 children. Ensign Church Pomeroy, born in 1847, and William Elias Pomeroy, born in 1852. In October of 1861, George and his son Ensign joined McLaughlin's squadron to fight for the Union in the American Civil War. George signed on as a first lieutenant and served in Stoneman's Raid in Macon, Georgia, and served under General Sherman on the Siege of Atlanta and the March to the Sea. After the war, George honed his skills as a machinist and was employed at several businesses around the Akron area. George was seen as a kind husband until his name was brought prominently before the public in a lawsuit under the little-known Dram Shop Law, also known as Adair's Law. Under this law, somebody who had suffered due to a person's intoxication could sue the bar owner for serving the alcohol that made the person intoxicated. George's wife, Mary, was the plaintiff and won the lawsuit and a sum of $300. George had an insatiable appetite for liquor, and when he was intoxicated, he was insufferable. George's alcoholism came to a head when he visited a local bar after work one night and became horribly drunk. He drove his wagon back to his home on Water Street in Akron, and when he got home, he was still very intoxicated, belligerent, and abusive. Mary had finally had enough. She fled to a neighbor's house across the street and stayed there for 2 weeks, the final 2 weeks of George's life. Now, Mary continued to cook meals for George and send them over every day. And one day, a few days later, when George had sobered up, he went across the street to the house and had a pleasant lunch with Mary. At the end of the lunch, George brought up the possibility of Mary coming back home. Mary thought about it for a little bit and then politely refused. Mary declined his offer, stating that she wouldn't come home until George sought help and showed signs of improvement. George left the lunch feeling numb. In order to clear his head, he decided to take a stroll down by the locks. When he arrived there, he obtained work from Captain Kilbuck, who was a canal boat captain. The captain needed George's help leading a canal boat north to Cleveland. Now, in 1877, extra work was hard to come by, so George agreed, took control of the horse team that helped pull the canal boats through the locks. This was a task that left George plenty of time to ponder his wife's ultimatum. No one noticed anything unusual about George's behavior until they reached this lock at 3 p.m. After pulling the canal boat through the lock, George abandoned the horses and sat down next to a fence, brandishing a large jackknife. Knowing there was no conquering his addiction and the prospect of losing his wife, George lost all hope. He laid down, put the knife to his neck, and, well, the canal boat captain, seeing what George was doing, started yelling frantically to anybody who could come and help. A man in the field heard the captain's cry and came running, but it was too late. 59-year-old George Washington Pomeroy was dead. I tend to think that his death was not only a result of his alcoholism, but also of a broken heart, knowing he was helpless against his disease and hopeless in his marriage. George's body was taken to a local grocery where it could be kept cold until preparations could be made for him to be buried here at Akron's Glendale Cemetery. Keep in mind, these grounds hold George's body, but what about his spirit? Is it possible that George's spirit somehow remains attached to Pancake Lock? Many people have reported interactions with George. Some say his ghost appears and tries to get you to convince his wife to come back to him. Others have felt tugging on their clothing, and when they ignore it, George just stomps on by. If you'd like to have an interaction with George, I would say two things. First, be careful. Playing with the paranormal is not to be taken lightly. Next, I would say be patient. George only appears after 3 p.m. when he's pulled his boat through the lock. Thanks for watching today, folks. I hope you've enjoyed the adventure. If you would, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. I love hearing from you. And I'll see you next time as we explore more curious history. Take care.